In my concluding message, that actually going to be a very brief message. The reason it's going to be very brief because I think that so much have been said already, and I wanted to simmer deeply in your heart. I want to conclude, before we go into the Q&A, with a message that I title, The Race is On. The race is on.
මගේ අවසාන පණිවිඩය ඇවිල්ලා තරංගයේ පටන් ගත්තා කියන පණිවිඩය මොකද හේතුව අපි ගොඩක් කතා කරන්න යන්නේ අපි කෙටි පණිවිඩයක් මෙවකන මොකද අපි පහුගිය දවස් කිහිපෙම ගොඩක් දේවල් කතා කරා මේ පණිවිඩය තරංගයේ පටන් ගත්තා කියන තේමාව යටතේ මම කතා කරන්න කැමතියි.
When I was boarding from Hong Kong to Colombo,
මම ගුවන්යානයට ඇතුල් වෙද්දී හොංකොං සිට කොළඹට
I noticed that another Orthodox rabbi was also boarding the same flight to Colombo.
මම නොටිස් කරා මේ ගුවන්යානේ තවත් සාම්ප්‍රදායික යුදෙව්වේ කොළඹට එනවා කියන එක මම දැක්කා.
And in this moment it's dawned on me that just like I come to give you the good news,
මම මට ඒ වෙලාවේ එකපාරටම ඔළුවට ආවා ඒ කියන්නේ මම මේ කොළඹට සුභාරංචිය දෝරාවක් ගේනවා වගේ
I'm not the only one who bring a message.
මම විතරක් නෙමෙයි මේ හොඳ ආරංචිය හොඳ සුභාරංචිය ගේන්නේ අනිකුත් යුදෙව්වෝ ඉන්නවා කියලා.
There are many who bringing messages.
ගොඩක් අය ඉන්නවා මේ වගේ සුභාරංචි කියන්නේ.
For example, our brother Pastor Benjamin in Indonesia can tell you
අපේ ඉන්දුනීසියාවේ පාස්ටර් බෙන්යාමින් ඔබට කියයි සමහර ගොඩක්
that a certain Orthodox rabbi that we will not even mention his name
එක්තරා සාම්ප්‍රදායික යුදෙව්වෙක් මම සඳහන් කරන්න කැමති නැති එක්තරා සාම්ප්‍රදායික යුදෙව්වෙක්
set his headquarters in Jakarta.
ඔහුගේ ප්‍රධාන කාර්යාලය ඉන්දුනීසියාවේ ජකාර්තා නුවර ස්ථාපනය කළා.
To create a strange and weird alliance between Islam and Judaism.
විශේෂ සම්බන්ධයක් ඇති කරගන්න ඉස්ලාම් සහ ජුදා ආගම අතරේ යම් සම්බන්ධයක් ඇති කරගන්න.
While aiming specifically at Messianic believers to bring them away from the faith.
ඒ කියන්නේ ඉලක්ක උනේ මෙසානික යුදෙව්වෝ ඉලක්ක කරගත්ත වුන් මේ අදහිරින් එළියට ගේන තමයි මේ යුදෙව්වා මේ ක්‍රියාව කරේ.
Let me tap on what Pastor Matt said.
මම ඔබට ආයි කියන්නම් පාස්ටර් මම කියපු දේ.
In case you didn't catch what he was trying to tell you, let me recap it in one sentence.
ඔබට ඔහු කියපු දේ එක්සර ලොකුට තේරුම් නැත්නම් මම එක වාක්‍යයකින් ඔහු කියපු දේ මුළු පරිදීම කියන්නම්.
Not only that machloket is not a bad thing,
විවාද කියන එක අවිලා අහකට දෙයක් නොවේ.
machloket is necessary.
ඒක අනිවාර්යෙන් අත්‍යවශ්‍ය දෙයක් මේ ක්‍රමවේද ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්න.
Machloket is crucial. Especially when we speak about the authenticity of the message that is brought forth. And we are right now in a real global race. For example, in America, in the United States, the fastest growing religion right now is Islam. Do you know that? In Europe, where I work a lot, Islam already took over many countries. In Judaism, there's also a race within Judaism. And the fastest growing branch of Judaism right now is a sect of orthodoxy called Hasidic movement. Specifically, if you heard the term Chabad before. Somebody sent me a picture of the moon with Chabad house on the moon. And the Rabbi Schneerson gave his disciple in 1979 a great commission. And he said, go to the four corners of the earth, find Jewish people, and love on them unconditionally to bring them to the God of Israel. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Another rabbi made the same statement. His name is Rabbi Yeshua. But in the essence, we must ask ourselves, what is the right message and who has the right message? It was obvious to me. I just came back from Nigeria recently. Let me explain to you why this race is so important. I was invited to go to a real remote area, literally in the jungles. To visit a Jewish tribe. And what was interesting about this tribe is that they kept many Jewish traditions. They kept circumcision. They kept the baby naming ceremony like in Judaism. They kept the law of women purity. They married under a chuppah. They kept kashrut, Jewish slaughtering. They slaughter animals like Jews. And many, many more. But also, they kept a lot of things that are external to Judaism. A lot of things from Christianity. So I sat with the tribal leaders and asked him, how do they two came together? Then they explained to me that all of those other traditions came in the 1800s, where Christian missionaries came. And they started to lose all of their traditions and their customs who were Jewish. You understand that the race is important. Our speed of getting to the people is important right now. And the chief broke my heart. He looked at me and he said, I wish the Jews came here before the Christians to give us the good news. Do you realize that this is the greatest calling of the Jewish people in the world, to bring the message, the good news to the nations? It's called Or LaGoyim. Us Jews, we must go the same road. I spoke this weekend about a race, and this race I called it the road. We must run it first before anybody else. The fullness of the Jews is critical for the fullness of the Gentiles. And I want to talk a moment about this fullness. In the book of Galatians chapter 4, we read about the fullness of the time. And And in the book of Romans 11, we read about the fullness of the Jews and the fullness of the Gentiles. And until both entities become full, whatever that means. Yesterday morning, I spoke to you about the fullness of Messiah, son of Joseph, and Messiah, son of David. Until the seed, which is the nations, planted itself in the good Jewish soil that is ripened and ready. The Geulah will not come. We have right now a lot of prepping up to do. I told yesterday to Daniel, I told him that now the real work starts. Now you have all the tools in your hand. You have Yeshua, you have the Torah, but right now the real work starts. When we look at the process of the Geulah, one of those steps that will lead us to the Geulah, and I'm going to use what Pastor Matt talked about. He gave us an analogy of a bridge. And in essence, what he was saying is, I wasn't even thinking about it until this moment. He's talking about putting the strain, too much strain on the bridge. Our rabbis describe the days before the coming of the Mashiach as the Chevlei HaMashiach. The day that the strain on the bridge will be so great. So we can expect right now, just before the redemption, the state of redemption, kind of like the story of Joseph and his brother. The tension was so great before the Geulah came. You know, I told you the story about me and my wife going up, right, to this mountain and nearly having a heart attack. We were going to a place called Paradise. And then we stopped in a place called Pleasant. Pleasant. I didn't feel pleasant. I almost had a heart attack. So when we got down, my wife said, okay, now let's drive around. And the entrance was only 1 kilometer. Apparently I took the wrong turn. We're driving for 10 minutes. We're driving for 30 minutes. And I realized that instead of going out in one way, I did a big loop of the entire national park. The thing became worse when I realized I am on zero gas. And it's nighttime. I don't know even where I'm at. Then it started to go flash. You know, when you go, like it's telling you how many miles you have. The car went on 0, 0, 0. And I'm nowhere. So I start praying. I found the exit. I found finally the exit till 0, 0, 0. I can feel the car is about to die. I felt it. And I saw in the corner of my eyes one gas station with one pump. The gas station was not working. Can it get any worse, Lord? Can it get any worse? They told me go across the street. The next gas station might work. I got to the next gas station. We don't take credit cards. Okay, I had like $2. Here you go. This $2 got me to the next gas station. And then the Geulah came. The process of Geulah is a process that will require strain. Yet the bridge will be strained. But it's important actually to go through this process of strain. It's called in Hebrew the umbilical cord of the Messiah. Because in this strain is actually where you see God's grace. And as a matter of fact, if you go to the next slide, our rabbis teach us every time that we're going through a state of redemption, every time we get to redemption, we have to follow the following blueprint. We have to follow destruction, where God will comfort us and ultimately will pull His mercy upon us. And when you have the mercy, you start again. Destruction, comfort. It's like a cycle that goes on and on and on. Interestingly enough, our rabbis tell us that in 70 AD, the destruction of the temple, we started a stage that's called the stage of comforting already. Isn't it interesting that Yeshua says that He is sending us what? The Comforter? The comforting stage is start. I want to talk to you about the final stage, the stage when you're on 0, 0, 0, and you think that nothing going to save you, yet God pour His mercy. What does it mean to experience God's mercy? I want to tell you something. We experienced God's mercy this weekend. Let's understand what the word mercy means actually. Next slide. The word mercy in Hebrew is a derivation of two words. The first was the word rechem. Not rechem, rechem. Rechem. I have to be accurate in Hebrew. Rechem, which means womb. The entire idea of a baby coming out of a womb represents God's mercy, being born again. Being born again is not a Christian term. For example, in Rosh Hashanah, we blow the shofar. The word shofar comes from the word shafar. Shofar means amniotic fluid around the womb. Which in essence speak about the fact that when we hear the sound of the shofar, we are the water broken and the baby is being born out. Rosh Hashanah is a day to be born again. Anybody been born again this weekend? I have been born again. That's what Shabbat is about. It's a day that you start over. Every Shabbat is a day you're being born again. But look at the other part of the word mercy is the word mine. Mine mean mercy. It's related to the concept of mercy. But Maim also speak about, in Judaism, Maim represent the Ruach HaKodesh, the pouring of the Holy Spirit. So when Yeshua says, those come to me, those who are thirsty, here is what he was saying. If you want to be born again, if you want to receive the Spirit of God, come to me. God wants to pour His Spirit. And a matter of fact, it's in the book of Joel that He's going to pour His Spirit upon all flesh. And what we have experienced here this weekend is God pouring the Spirit upon us. But imagine what it's going to be like when He pours His Spirit upon all flesh. The Lubavitcher Rebbe says something interesting. He makes a distinction between the pouring upon all flesh and pouring it upon an individual. And he says that each person who goes through a process that's called a personal salvation, contributing, this person contributing for the ultimate pouring of God's Spirit. Imagine a barrel up to here. And I tell you that the only way you can fill this barrel is one drop at a time. How many drops do you think it's going to take to fill the barrel? Many, many drops. We can work for days and weeks and months. But eventually it's going to get full enough that's going to come the one last drop. And it will be enough to burst the entire thing. That is the completion of the Geulah. And you don't know whether or not you will be this last drop that's going to go into the barrel, that's going to make this thing burst. The message of the Torah is that each drop is important. Each one of us carry unique value for the entity, this barrel, and this barrel has a name. It's called the House of Israel. So I'm challenging you this today to take seriously this seed that God has entrusted to you. This drop of water, and make sure that it goes straight back to the right vessel of the house of Israel. And as a matter of fact, Judaism teaches that the problem is there's plenty of vessels in the world. There are plenty of drops. The problem is in retaining it. The retention. The problem a lot of time is not in the drops themselves, it's about the vessel of where they are being planted. I'm coming back to this parable of the sower because that's what Yeshua was talking about. It's a concept that's called tikkun kelim. Make sure you're planting in the right soil. Tikkun kelim means the repair of the vessel. My job as a Jew is to do the tikkun of the kli. Your job is to get inside the vessel. See, Jew and Gentile, different role, but one corporate entity. The reason that I am saying that this vessel, this is very important, that this vessel is the house of Israel, is not because I said so. Consider the words about the New Testament, or the new covenant, I should say, or the new covenant given us by the prophet Jeremiah. Next slide. He says that the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant. But look who is making the covenant with. With the people of Israel and with the people of Yehuda. This is important. The new covenant belongs exclusively for the house of Israel. It doesn't belong to the church. I'm sorry to say that. You have two choices. You have a choice to go away from the new covenant, or to adapt yourself and graft yourself in to the house of Israel. This is enough reason to be wanting to be engrafted into it. And here is what God told me through the Holy Spirit. We've been having 2,000 years of drip, drop, drip, drop, drip, drop. I remember a story. I probably should not say this story, but I'll tell you this story. Because Pastor Matt loves my stories. One time, when we were kids, we did something we should not have done. We're naughty kids. My mother always let me to go play between 4 and 6. 6:01 I have to be home. 6:02 I'm in big trouble. But it was 6:01 and we were middle of a hot game of football. Real football, none of this American nonsense. It was a hot summer day. I remember as a kid, I remember the sweat. And I just needed a drop of water. But I knew that if I go home, my mother will never let me go down. So as we are looking at the football field, my friend noticed a hose. And I said, hey, maybe there's water in the hose. And I said, okay, yeah, here's what we're going to do. I don't know what we were thinking. I have no idea. Don't laugh. I literally took the hose, put my mouth on this hose, dirty old hose, and held it like that. And I said, I'm ready, turn it on. I'm ready, turn it on. Oh Lord. Inside, there was a wasp. Number one, I swallowed the wasp. Very sick for a few days. Don't do that. But here's the worst thing that happened. He didn't just turn it a little bit. He turned it. And when he turned it, it started coming out of my nose. It started coming out of my ears. And it was such a pressure that came out that my cheeks went like that. Nearly popped my cheeks out. There was such a spillage of water that it's literally just consumed my entire face. I remember coming out of my nostrils. God is about to turn the water on. I sense by God that He is the one who is standing right now. And He said, okay, you ready? I am about to fill up this barrel in a fast. Did you notice something? Does it seem to you or just to me that time goes faster these days? Look at our life. Look at the speed of our life. It's almost like time is going faster. You know why? Because we're in the fullness of time. So God is about to put the holes into this barrel called the house of Israel, and is going to be filling in an exponential rate. We're in these days. Look at you. We have Gentiles who are standing for Shacharit morning prayer. I promise you, 20 years ago, that would have not happened. I promise you that 500 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,500 years ago, that would have not happened. The awakening of the nations to be engrafted into the house of Israel is happening right now in an exceeding way. Us Messianic Jews have a problem. You wonder how many, so many Jews are psychologists, doctors, and shrinks. And the reason is because for 2,000 years they tried to kill us. So we have a lot of emotional scar. I remember I was in a flight from Dallas to London. And it was in the business class. I recall this flight. Right next to me was one of the leaders, the main leaders of Chabad, London. And I was reading the Bible during the flight. And he looked at me. He said, "Oh, it's Hebrew. What are you reading?" So I told him I'm reading. I'm preparing. I told him I'm a Messianic Jewish rabbi, and I'm preparing to teach the Goyim. And he said, "Why would you want to do that? Why would you want to teach him about our holy Torah?" So I looked at him. I opened to Isaiah. And I told him, "You are asking me this question? Israel's greatest call is to be Or Lagoim. What do you think they all mean? They all is the Torah. And he said, you know what? We're probably missing the point of going to the Goyim. Because without Yeshua, the Torah doesn't even make sense. Do you realize that? It's like I'm telling you, hey, do you like bagel? Pastor Matt, do you like a bagel? From Einstein Bagel, right? When you come to my house, what do we do in the morning? We're going to go like good Jews and we eat bagel. We plan our day over bagel and cream cheese. But next time that you come to my house, I will bring the bagels. But I will sell you, I will give you the hole in the bagel. I'm not going to give you the bagel. I'll give you, hey, Matt, you want the hole? That's the problem today. We are selling the hole and we're not selling the full bagel. The full bagel is Yeshua and the Torah coming together. This is important to the fulfillment of the house of Israel. Here is my projection of what's going to happen in our lifetime. We are going to see a revival unlike any other revival in human history. Of hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands of ones who were called Gentiles according to the flesh, who will come to the covenants of the house of Israel. No man can stop this. And even the Messianic Jewish movement in America does not fully understand it. That the Gentiles coming is a fulfillment of prophecy. Look with me in the book. Look with me what Isaiah 14 it says. Isaiah 14 says. It says, for Adonai, he will have a compassion on Jacob. He will have a compassion of Jacob, and he will again choose Israel. Anybody who believes in replacement theology, your theology destroyed right there. God chosen Israel, and he will choose Israel in the future. Amen and amen. God is not polygamous. He will not change Israel for any other bride. The church is not the bride. He will settle them in their own land. Hello? Where is Israel right now? Where is Israel right now? Where are the Jewish people right now? Go back, go back. Go back. Go back. Israel went through a destruction on a macro level when Hitler tried to destroy the entire Jewish race. He nearly brought the Churban, he nearly brought the destruction on the entire Jewish race. Go back to the passage now. The Geulah has started when Israel started to return to the land. Are you hearing what I'm telling you? The baby, the Mashiach, the Geulah, like a baby coming out. The Geulah already started, the baby is coming out. We are settled in our land. Don't worry about this land. Israel will be fine because God and God alone brought us back there. Jewish people ask, Why did the Holocaust have to happen? It had to happen in order for the Messiah to return. Did it dawn on you that Israel suffered in the Holocaust for the Gentiles to be coming back in? I know it sounds crazy. The suffering Messiah of Isaiah 53 is the 6 million Jews who suffered in the Holocaust. It's true. 6 million Jews were slaughtered. So a remnant of our people, called the pioneer, the Chalutzim, leave everything behind to establish the state of Israel. Look what happened. 1948, Israel is being established. 67, 6 Days War. 73, Yom Kippur War. God started to pour His Spirit upon Jewish people by the thousands to come to know Yeshua in the 70s. And here is the next step in the chapter. Are you ready? How blessed we are that we live in this step. We're living in this time now. We are the generation of Isaiah 14. The outsider will join himself with them, and he will cling to the house of Jacob. What do you think is going to happen? There is going to be a remnant from every tribe and every tongue that will grab the tzitzit of the Jew and will not let go. We are living right now. This conference is a fulfillment of this prophecy. It's happening all over the world. It's interesting that the translators here mistranslated this word. It says the outsider, but it doesn't actually say the outsider. If you look at the Hebrew, it says that the person will join himself to Israel. He called Ger. Ger in this text context mean a dweller among the Jewish people. The literal meaning of the word Ger is a dweller. How can one dwell among and within the Jewish people if he doesn't understand what it means to have a Jewish identity? What I'm telling you today, when you become dwellers, you will hasten the coming of the Messiah. That's why I said to you, do not become a Noachite. Do not become a Noachite. If you are a Noachite, you are not a Ger Tzedek. You are Noachite. Only those who taken upon themselves the identity of the house of Israel will become part of the house of Jacob. Remember yesterday that I told you that Jacob and Joseph, Judah and Joseph had to become one? This is important word, this word clinging, this word to cling. In Hebrew, the word cling is the word nispechu, which literally what the New Testament called the engrafting. The question that I asked yesterday is the same question I'm asking today. Do you want to be engrafted? This is important to say yes. But please you understand why you should say yes. Remember when my story with the hose? When I stuck the hose in my mouth, he didn't turn the hose until I said I'm ready. He looked at me, I'm ready. And then the explosion took place. God is looking today for the nations to raise their hand and say, we are ready. Hurry up, Gentiles. Why it took you 2,000 years? Where have you been? God wants right now to speed the Geulah through you. A matter of fact, he says it's going to happen through the fullness of the Gentiles. Let me conclude with this. In the Torah portion this week, Parashat Vayechi, we are introduced to this concept, the fullness of the Gentiles. Again, it's important. That's why I encourage you to take the course for Pastor Matt called Understanding Paul. Anything that Paul is telling you based on Torah. And even when Paul uses a term like the fullness of the Gentiles, it's a term that is found in the Torah. Look what the Torah portion this week, it just happened. What a prophetic, I'm blessed that it's this week. Look what it says. Next slide. Oh, by the way, can you go back for 1 second? Actually, look what's going to happen to the rest of the world. All the worlds will become the servants of the house of Israel. You don't want to be in the wrong side, friends. We know who wins. We know who get the victory. Choose the God of Israel, the people of Israel, and a Jewish identity today. Go with me to the Torah portion this week. Ephraim and Manasseh are being born. And of course, Joseph had a machloket with his father. About the blessing. So look at this. But his father objected, saying, I know, son. I know. He too shall become a people. And he will become great. Yet his younger, talking about Ephraim, his younger brother shall be greater than he. And his offspring shall be plentiful enough for the nations. The key of understanding what Jacob meant is in those words, plentiful enough for the nations. I am about to show you something amazing. Pay attention. This term in English, plentiful enough for the nations, is this term Melo Goim. So another way to read it is to say, in offspring shall become the fullness of the Gentiles. So the million-dollar question, what does it mean to have the fullness of the Gentiles? When Paul speaks about the fullness of the Gentiles, what did he mean? You know, I used to be associated with a seminary that asked me to do translation work. And the dean of the seminary had this giant map of the gospel. And he says, you see, he told me, when this map will be read and the gospel will be heard, then Jesus will return. We need to keep on sending missionaries to Africa, missionary for India, missionary for Asia, missionary for South America, missionary. That is the way the modern church interpreting the fullness of the Gentiles. You see how dangerous it is to interpret Paul without understanding the Torah? You end up with the wrong theology and the wrong actions. So what actually the fullness of the Gentiles means? Let me tell you the way us Jews interpret it. And you might say, well, big deal. That's the way the Jewish people interpret it. It is a big deal. Because Paul says in Romans 3:1-2 that the oracle of God have been entrusted to the Jewish people. It is given to us. And the interpretation is given to us. The holy language is given to us. Look at Orach Chaim. Next slide. Ephraim, the younger one, go back. Go back. Oh, I didn't put it. Let me read it to you. Orach Chaim says, Ephraim, oh, okay, thank you. Ephraim was destined to become Melo Goyim. This is important. Which means that at the time he would occupy a higher position, though at the moment Menashe fulfilled his role as a firstborn perfectly. When we're talking about the fullness, we are not talking about the number. We are talking about the ranking. We are talking about priority. Rashi, though, even go further. Go to the previous slide to Rashi. And Rashi explained Melo Goyim like that. He said, and his children will fill the nation. What does Melo Goyim mean? He says, the whole world will be filled. The entire world will be filled when his fame and his name are spread. When he stopped at the sun in Gibeon and the moon in the valley of Alon. It is important to know that we need to spread his name and his fame. But it is talking about a specific name. I mean, listen, if we say Jesus, it's not the same as saying Yeshua. So look at this. This is absolutely amazing. Next slide. The word melo, actually speaking about the full understanding that's going to come to the world through Ephraim. And look what it says. Here the rabbi says, Shiyeh olech shmo bechol hagoyim. His name will be published through the nations. And if you take this term in Hebrew, if it doesn't make somebody believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, nothing will. His seed will be our fullness, in Hebrew equivalent to the name Yehoshua. Yeshua is the only one, that only name that is going to bring the fullness of the Gentiles. I didn't hear wow. Maybe you didn't understand what I was saying here. If you take this term, the fullness of the Gentiles, in Hebrew it's equivalent to the name Yeshua. That is incredible. Yeshua needs to be known. What does it mean to know the full understanding of Yeshua? We need to understand the setting that Yeshua lived, how he lived, what he practiced, who he worshipped, how he worshipped. Yeah. Yeshua did not go to Sunday services, sorry. He went to Shabbat services. Yeah, Yeshua says Shema Israel every day. Yes, Yeshua celebrated Hanukkah. Yes, Yeshua did not celebrate Easter. Yeshua did not have a Christmas tree. And he didn't have a little egg bunny. Yeshua celebrated Shavuot. Yeshua celebrates Sukkot. Yeshua ate kosher. And your responsibility is to resemble Yeshua. Christians want to spiritualize everything. But Yeshua said, let your light shine before men. The externality is important, friends. Yeah, I agree with what Pastor Mark said yesterday. Don't do anything without understanding. But you need to understand. For example, if Yeshua wear a talit, why did he wear a talit? What did it mean to him? If Yeshua celebrated the Hanukkah, why did he celebrate the Hanukkah? I am telling you, don't do those things for the sake of Judaism, but do those things for the sake of the fullness of your spiritual seed. You have a spiritual seed. And I suppose that's a miracle. I have a physical seed. I don't need to think about what it means to be a Jew. I don't have an identity issue. Well, I do in Passover. When the Ashkenazim give me gefilte fish and the Sfaradim give me spicy fish. You need to understand. Never mind. Man, it's hard to compete with Pastor Matt jokes. I'm going to stick to theology. I cannot do the voices like him, neither. But the seed here of Yeshua is that you have is a different kind of seed than I said I have. Some people, like Tuvia Singer, try to argue that the word zera, that's one of the most stupid arguments I've ever heard, by the way. Because in the book of Ezekiel it says that the zera of the Mashiach will have a zera, therefore he's a regular human being with a physical children. But you know that the word zera can mean spiritual in many places, like in Isaiah, he's speaking about a zera, that we came from the zera of Hashem. Obviously we didn't. Zera can mean a spiritual. You have a different zera. But your job, right? Yesterday I spoke to you about this parable of the soil and the seed. You must grab the right zera. And this zera is Yeshua. The full version of who Yeshua is. And when you grab this zera, you will partake of the fullness of the Gentiles. And then the world will move to the next version. Go to the next slide. The world will move from an exile to a state of revelation. You see, the word exile and revelation is the exact same Hebrew word. Galut, hit galut. If you have an exile, how can you have a revelation? Guess what? That's where God loved to work. He loved to work in the exile. He loved to work in the wilderness. Has it dawned on you, Israel? So more miracles outside the state of Israel, the nation of Israel, in the wilderness than any other places. A lot of you are operating in a Muslim countries where there's a physical and spiritual exile. Rejoice. That is where God is going to work more than any other place. When Israel left Egypt, and they commanded to start the sacrifices before the Mishkan, it's called in the Torah Lela Shimurim. Lela Shimurim. God says something very strange. He says that you are to start the sacrifices in the midnight. Not during the day, but in the darkest time. Why? Because the Geulah starts out of destruction. The Geulah starts out of darkness. And God called each and every one of you, wherever state you are, wherever country you are from, to find in the darkness the spiritual seed. The problem with the Gentiles is when they want the physical seed.
You know
what the problem with the two-house movement? They want to be physical Israel instead of the common house of Israel. I think Paul makes a very strong argument that a spiritual seed is superior to a physical seed. That's the entire argument of Rav Shaul. While learning Hava Nagila is important, because it's bring the fullness, you will never become a physical seed, but you will become something much better. A spiritual seed of Yeshua Mashiach. And in that, all of Israel shall be saved. Amen.